Hey everyone, it's Clay Dixon with LearnToBassFish.com. I appreciate you tuning in with me today. You know, I want to talk to you a little bit about fall bass fishing because this is the fall time of the year. The trees are turning all kinds of different colors. The water temperature has dropped from somewhere up in the high 80s or low 90s. It's now down here at Lake of the Ozarks. I think it's around 77 degrees right now. I'm sorry, 67 degrees right now. So, you know, the whole nature thing is changing, and with it comes some of the best bass fishing of the year if you understand what's going on your favorite lake. And what's going on your lake right now is that as those temperatures drop, the shad are moving from deep water, where they've spent most of the summer, back into these long extended coves and creek arms. And when those shad make that migrational movement in the fall, the bass will naturally follow. And then what happens in Mother Nature is that the shad ultimately get caught in these coves when the water temperature really drops. And when that happens, many of these shad will die. Millions of them, in fact, will die. The bass will feed up on these shad in preparation for their colder water, colder winter months. If you're at the right place at the right time this time of year, it's unbelievable, you know, what can happen and how many fish and how many big fish that you're likely to catch. But let's talk about it for a second. The key temperature, in my view, is about 70 degrees. When the water temperature hits 70, those shad are starting or have already migrated towards the back end of the cove. As that water temperature hits about 62, 3, and 4, they're really back there, and you need to be back there with them. In fact, if you can't see shad in that cove or in the back end of that creek arm, then don't spend any time fishing it, because I'm going to assure you now that you may find a bunch of shad and no bass, but you're not going to find bass without those shad. One of the things that you want to do that's different than what you might do, for example, any other time of the year, particularly in the summer, is as you fish some of these long coves or some of these long creek arms, you know, historically what we would do most of the time is we would fish where there's a channel bend, where a creek comes in, hits the bank, and leaves the bank. And at the point where that creek channel hits the bank and leaves the bank, in particular, those are two key spots that we want to fish, but not in the fall. In the fall, what happens is that water temperature drops below 70 degrees and these shad start migrating back up these creek arms. We want to go on the other side of that creek. We want to fish the flat side of that creek, not the steep and deeper side, but the flat side. Now, what do you fish when you find your way back in the back of these coves? What is it that you're looking for? Well, you're looking for cover of some type. Now, here at Lake of the Ozarks, you know, that could be boat docks, for example. There are millions of boat docks down here on this particular lake. Now, where you are, there may not be boat docks, but there's going to be trees or laydowns or brush, and that's what you're looking for, because what those bass will do is they will look for an ambush point where they can set up and catch those shad back when they're most vulnerable, back in the back ends of these creeks. So, for example, if I'm fishing a boat dock, you know, what I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to be looking for the side of that dock that has the shade on it. And instead of fishing, you know, if this is a boat dock here, instead of fishing the outside points of that dock, which is fairly typical for the summer months, the deeper side of that dock, because you got to, you know, for example, you got the creek here and you got the bank here. What you need to do is you need to go to the very back end where that dock is connected to the bank, and you need to fish back in these corners, in the very back in the shallow water. I know that may not make sense, but trust me, it's true. What will happen is those bass will set up in water so shallow on the shady side of that dock or the shady side of that brush pile in water so shallow that might only be 1 foot or 2 foot deep. And one of the top lures, and particularly in the morning, and I would break fishing into probably 3 categories: morning, and then from about 10:30, 11 o'clock until about 3 or 4, and then from 4 o'clock on late afternoon. And in the morning, and really in the late afternoon as well, they're pretty much the same lures. Topwater is a really good choice. If you like topwater fishing, man, this is the time of year to do it. This water temperature's got these fish really active. They're looking for those dead shad or those shad that are dying. Well, what better way to do that than a topwater lure like a Zara Spook, for example? or a popar, or anything that mimics a dying shad on the surface. A buzzbait is a really good lure for early in the morning as well. In fact, it's a good lure all day. I've caught fish on buzzbaits at 12 o'clock noon in the fall, so I tend to keep one tight on the entire time I'm out fishing. But particularly in the morning, you got buzzbaits and you got topwater lures that mimic dying shad, like a Zara spook, like a popar, that sort of lure as well. Another good choice in the morning, in my opinion, and particularly late morning, is a jerkbait. Okay, because a jerkbait allows you to work that right down that cover, whether that's a boat dock, a brush pile, a log. You can take that lure and work it right down that cover, keep it in the strike zone a long time. And of course, what does a jerkbait mimic? It perfectly mimics what? A dying shad, right? And then as the morning progresses and you get into 10:30, 11, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the sun's up. These fish are going to be tucked even tighter up into that cover. My go-to lure is a jig with some type of plastic trailer on it. Down here at Lake of the Ozarks, a black and blue combination seems to be a pretty good color given the watercolor conditions here. But it could be crawdad color, it could be, in my view, almost anything. So the important thing is you want something that's fairly bulky. I think this is a 3/8. A lot of people down here throw a 1/2 inch. I don't care where you live, if it's Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, or New Mexico, wherever it is, this jig with a plastic trailer is going to catch fish. Now the key is silent entry. Go look at some of the videos I have on flipping and pitching, because that's the technique you need right now, is flipping and pitching, because you're going to be in very shallow water. In fact, as this water temperature drops into the 60s, if your trolling motor isn't kicking up dirt, if you can't see it kicking up dirt, you may not be shallow enough. I know that's hard to believe, but trust me, it's true. So in that kind of what I call thin water, you got to be super silent, super quiet, trolling motor on low. You don't need your locators. Turn them off. You don't need them. They just make excess noise. Fish slowly, methodically, flipping and pitching. Do it with a jig, with a pork trailer on it. You're going to be shocked at the kind of fish that you can catch. So if this helps you for your tip for this coming fall, let me know what you think. Send me an email. You'll find my email on the website, which is learntobassfish.com or kansasfisherman.com, either one. Send me an email and let me know how successful, hopefully, that you've been using some of these techniques this fall. Again, this is Clay Dixon, learntobassfish.com. Until next time, see ya.